My fiance's Bachelorette instructions. No recording devices. What happens tonight dies tonight. I said, have your privacy. The private investigator hired had different instructions. What her parents saw at the rehearsal dinner made her dad cancel the wedding. The pie said it was the easiest $700 he ever made. So there I was, sitting on my own couch in my own apartment, feeling like I was about to get detention from the principal. Clara had that look, you know the one. The same expression my mom used to give me when she found out I'd been trading my lunch money for Pokemon cards. Except this time, instead of confiscating my holographic Charizard, my fiancée was about to lay down the law about her bachelorette party. Okay, babe, she said, settling into the cushions like she was preparing to deliver a State of the Union address. We need to talk about ground rules for this weekend. Her voice had that weird formal tone she only used when she was either really nervous or really hiding something. Kind of like when politicians start talking about the American people. You just know some sketchy stuff is about to go down. I leaned back, trying to look casual while my brain was already firing up the old paranoia engine. Ground rules? What is this, summer camp? I laughed, but she didn't crack even a tiny smile. Red flag number 1, folks. Clara laughs at everything. She once giggled at a funeral because the organist hit a wrong note. When Clara doesn't laugh at my jokes, something's definitely wrong with the universe. She clasped her hands together like she was praying, which was ironic considering what I'd find out later. No recording devices. No phones during the main activities. What happens at the bachelorette party stays at the bachelorette party. She paused, staring at me with those big blue eyes that used to make me forget my own name. Now they just looked, calculating. This is really important to me, okay? I need you to promise. I blinked. Twice. Because honestly, what kind of bachelorette party needs the same security protocols as a CIA black site operation? I mean, I've been to bachelor parties. Sure, we got rowdy. Maybe someone puked in a potted plant. And yeah, there might have been that incident with the mechanical bull and Jerry's dignity. But we never needed to sign non-disclosure agreements or surrender our phones like we were entering NORAD. Clara, I said, trying to keep my voice light and breezy. You're talking about your bachelorette party like you're planning to overthrow a small government. What exactly are you guys going to be doing that requires more secrecy than the Manhattan Project? She shifted uncomfortably, and I swear I could practically see the gears turning behind her eyes. It's not about what we're doing, she said, which is basically the universal way of saying it's totally about what we're doing. It's about privacy, girl time, sacred sisterhood stuff. You wouldn't understand. Sacred sisterhood stuff. Right. Because nothing says sacred like needing to confiscate everyone's phones. I nodded slowly, putting on my best understanding boyfriend face, while my internal alarm system was basically having a full-scale meltdown. Sure, babe. I get it. Girls need their space. But here's the thing about me. I'm not exactly what you'd call trusting by nature. Maybe it's because I grew up with 3 sisters who could lie about eating the last cookie while chocolate was still smeared on their faces. Maybe it's because I've watched enough true crime documentaries to know that the person saying, "Trust me," is usually the person you shouldn't trust. Or maybe it's just common sense. But when someone starts laying down rules that sound like they're straight out of Fight Club, my suspicious boyfriend's senses start tingling like Spider-Man's web shooters. Have your privacy, I said out loud, giving her my most supportive smile. Inside my head, though, I was thinking something completely different. You just convinced me to hire surveillance. See, Clara doesn't know this, but I have trust issues that run deeper than the Mariana Trench. Not because I'm some paranoid freak, but because I've been burned before. My ex-girlfriend Sarah once told me she was going to her grandmother's funeral and needed space to grieve. Turned out Grandma was alive, well, and living in Tampa, while Sarah was busy playing horizontal twister with her yoga instructor. So yeah, when my current fiancé starts talking about sacred sisterhood and phone confiscation, my inner detective gets really, really interested. That's when I remembered Marty. Marty Kowalski, retired NYPD detective turned private investigator. A guy who looks like he's been through 3 divorces and survived on nothing but gas station coffee and disappointment. I met him at my buddy Jake's divorce proceedings, where he was providing evidence that Jake's wife had been more interested in her personal trainer than her marriage. Marty had this gut that looked like he'd been storing evidence in there for decades, a face that looked like it had lost several arguments with a brick wall, and the kind of world-weary cynicism that made him really, really good at his job. I called him that night after Clara went to bed. "Marty? It's me, the guy from Jake's divorce thing. I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" His voice sounded like he'd been gargling gravel and cigarette smoke for about 40 years. "The kind that involves following my fiancée to her bachelorette party and making sure she's not doing anything that would, in our engagement." There was a pause, then a chuckle that sounded like a diesel engine starting up. "Kid, let me guess." She laid down some suspicious ground rules. "No phones, no recording devices. What happens there stays there. The whole 9 yards. Ah, the classic setup." I could practically hear him nodding. "You know what? This is going to be the easiest $700 I ever made." $700. That's what it cost to potentially save myself from marrying someone who might be treating her bachelorette party like an audition for cheaters. I did the math in my head. $700 versus a lifetime of marriage to someone who might be lying to my face. Seemed like a pretty good investment. "Deal," I said. "But Marty? If nothing happens, if she really is just having innocent fun with the girls, then you wasted $700 and you can sleep easy for the rest of your life," he finished. "But if something does happen, well, you just saved yourself a mortgage payment and about a decade of therapy sessions." Hard to argue with that logic. As I hung up the phone, I felt this weird mix of guilt and anticipation. Part of me felt like I was betraying Clara's trust, but then again, if you need to establish rules that would make the NSA proud, maybe trust was already off the table. And honestly, if she was being honest about everything, then Marty would come back with footage of Clara and her friends doing face masks and singing karaoke off-key. I'd be out $700, but I'd also be marrying someone who deserved my trust. If she wasn't being honest, well, then $700 was about to become the best money I'd ever spent. Either way, this was going to be interesting. Spoiler alert, Marty was absolutely right. Asterisk. You know what they say about red flags? When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, they just look like flags. Well, let me tell you, my glasses weren't just rose-colored at this point. They were practically neon pink, and those flags were starting to look like a damn parade. It wasn't actually Clara's initial rule-laying that got my paranoia meter hitting DEFCON 1. I mean, sure, the whole no phones, no recording devices thing was weird, but maybe she really did just want some old-school girl time without everyone posting Instagram stories every 5 minutes. Maybe she wanted to ugly cry about wedding stress without it ending up on someone's Snapchat. I could buy that. Hell, I'd been to enough bachelor parties where someone's drunk karaoke performance of My Heart Will Go On ended up haunting them on Facebook for years. No, what really got me sweating like a sinner in church was the repetition. Clara mentioned her precious phone rule 3 separate times over the next few days. 3 times. And each time, she said it with this weird intensity, like she was trying to hypnotize me into compliance. First time was right after our initial conversation, when she brought it up again during dinner. "You remember what we talked about, right? About the no phones thing?" she said, stabbing her salad like it had personally offended her. "It's really, really important to me that everyone respects that boundary." I nodded, chewing my pasta and thinking, asterisk okay, she's just making sure I heard her. That's normal, right? Right? Asterisk. Second time was Thursday morning when I was getting ready for work. She cornered me in the bathroom while I was brushing my teeth, which should have been my first clue that this wasn't a casual conversation. Nothing good ever happens when someone traps you in a bathroom to talk. "Hey, babe," she said, watching me in the mirror with this intense stare. "You're not going to, try to crash the party or anything, are you?" Because the girls are really serious about the no outside interference policy. I spat out my toothpaste and turned to look at her. "Clara, why would I crash your bachelorette party? Do I look like the kind of guy who wants to watch you and your friends do whatever it is you're going to do?" "I'm just making sure," she said, but her smile looked tighter than my jeans after Thanksgiving dinner. The third time sealed the deal. Friday afternoon, literally as she was packing her overnight bag for the big night, she brought it up again. "Promise me," she said, gripping my hands like she was about to deliver some dying wish. "Promise me you won't try to check up on us. What happens at the bachelorette party stays at the bachelorette party." At that point, I'm thinking, if she'd said it one more time, I would have started checking our house for hidden stripper poles. I mean, come on. The lady doth protest too much, methinks. And yes, I just quoted Shakespeare about my fiance's potential infidelity. College English major, don't judge me. But the real nail in the coffin came from an unexpected source. Sierra Martinez, Clara's maid of honor and professional oversharer. Sierra's the kind of person who has no filter between her brain and her mouth. She once told me about her gynecologist appointment while we were eating dinner. The woman couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it, which made what happened next so beautifully ironic. We were at Jake and Kelly's house for their weekly game night. You know, the kind of suburban social gathering where everyone brings craft beer and pretends to care about each other's jobs. Clara and I were crushing it at couples trivia when Sierra, 3 wine spritzers deep and feeling chatty, suggested we play Never Have I Ever. Now, for those of you who somehow missed this particular ritual of American social humiliation, Never Have I Ever is basically a game designed to make people accidentally confess their deepest secrets while drunk. It's like truth serum, but with more giggling and less CIA involvement. We went around the circle with the usual suspects. Never have I ever stolen something from a hotel. Never have I ever lied about my age. Never have I ever kissed someone of the same gender. Standard stuff that makes everyone feel mildly uncomfortable, but not enough to actually leave the party. Then Sierra, God bless her wine-addled brain, decided to go nuclear. Never have I ever, she announced with the confidence of someone who has clearly forgotten that loose lips sink ships. Hired entertainment that required an NDA. The room went quiet. Not movie quiet, but that special kind of quiet that happens when someone accidentally reveals state secrets at a dinner party. Jake paused mid-sip of his IPA. Kelly looked confused. And Clara? Clara went pale. Not just regular pale, but the kind of pale you see in horror movies right before someone gets possessed by a demon. I, meanwhile, was trying to process what I'd just heard while maintaining my poker face. Entertainment that required an NDA? What kind of entertainment needs a non-disclosure agreement? I mean, even the guy who dressed up as Spider-Man at my nephew's birthday party didn't make us sign legal documents. Sierra, Clara hissed through gritted teeth, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. But Sierra, bless her heart, was on a roll. What? Oh, come on. It's not that big a deal. It's totally normal for bachelorette parties these days. Very professional, very discreet. Professional, discreet. Entertainment requiring NDAs. My brain was putting puzzle pieces together faster than a speed solver with a Rubik's Cube, and the picture that was emerging was not exactly what you'd call wedding appropriate. I laughed it off, because what else do you do when your fiancé's maid of honor accidentally implies they're hiring some kind of classified adult entertainment? Haha. Very funny, Sierra. What's next? You guys hiring the CIA? But inside, those alarm bells weren't just ringing. They were playing a full orchestral arrangement of Your Fiancé is Probably Up to Something. The kind of symphony that would make Beethoven proud and make trusting boyfriends everywhere weep. Clara spent the rest of the night trying to damage control, shooting Sierra looks that could have melted steel, and changing the subject every time anyone even hinted at bringing up the bachelorette party again. She laughed too loud at everyone's jokes, complimented Kelly's boring casserole like it was Gordon Ramsay's latest creation, and generally acted like someone who was trying way too hard to seem normal. You know what they say, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. And Clara was covering up harder than a politician caught with his pants down. On the drive home, she was quiet. Not comfortable silence quiet, but the kind of quiet that feels like a storm brewing. I could practically hear her brain working, probably trying to figure out how much I'd pieced together from Sierra's wine-fueled confession. Sierra was just being dramatic, she finally said as we pulled into our driveway. You know how she gets when she drinks. Yeah, I agreed, because what else was I supposed to say? She definitely gets creative with her stories. But as I watched Clara hurry inside, her shoulders tense like she was carrying the weight of the world, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sierra hadn't been dramatic at all. If anything, she'd probably been the most honest person in that room all night. That night, lying in bed next to Clara, listening to her pretend to sleep while clearly stressing about something, I made my decision. Marty was definitely getting that $700. Because entertainment requiring NDAs? Yeah, that's not the kind of bachelorette party activity that ends with everyone going home to their significant others with clear consciences. And those alarm bells in my head, they were getting louder than my Uncle Pete after chilly night, just like I'd thought. Way louder. Meeting Marty for our official consultation felt like something straight out of a noir film, except instead of a smoky back alley bar, we met at a Denny's off Route 95 at 2 in the afternoon. Nothing says professional private investigation quite like discussing potential infidelity over a Grand Slam breakfast and bottomless coffee that tastes like it was filtered through old gym socks. Marty slid into the booth across from me, and I swear the vinyl seat groaned under the weight of his, let's call it, experience. The guy looked exactly like Central Casting would order for a retired cop who's seen too much. His gut stretched his polo shirt like he was smuggling a basketball. His face had more lines than a road map of Texas, and his eyes held that special kind of weariness that comes from 25 years of dealing with humanity's greatest hits. "So," he said, dumping about 6 sugar packets into his coffee without even tasting it first, "your fiance's got you spooked about her bachelorette party. Tell me what you know." I laid out the whole story, the mysterious rules, the repetitive warnings, Sierra's wine-fueled confession about entertainment requiring NDAs. Marty listened like a therapist, except instead of taking notes about my feelings, he was probably calculating his hourly rate. When I finished, he leaned back and chuckled. Not a happy chuckle, mind you, but the kind of laugh you hear from someone who's been around this particular block so many times he could navigate it blindfolded. "Kid," he said, stirring his coffee with a spoon that had definitely seen better decades, "let me explain my business model to you. I've been doing this for 12 years now. Ever since I retired from the force. You know what I've learned? Bachelorette parties fall into exactly 2 categories." He held up one finger, thick as a bratwurst and probably twice as tough. Category 1, wine, karaoke, and ugly crying about cellulite. Maybe some dancing, definitely some oversharing about relationship problems, possibly someone puking in a fancy restaurant bathroom. Harmless stuff that would bore you to tears, but makes great bonding memories for the ladies involved. I nodded, hoping against hope that Clara fell into Category 1. Marty held up a second finger. Category 2. He paused, taking a long sip of his coffee and grimacing like he'd just tasted motor oil. "Let's just say Vegas would blush. And I'm talking about the Vegas that invented the phrase, 'What happens here, stays here.' My stomach did that thing where it feels like you're on a roller coaster. Except instead of fun, it's just pure dread. And you think Clara's party is?" "Kid, in 12 years of doing this job, I followed maybe 60 bachelorette parties. You know how many required the guests to surrender their phones and sign NDAs?" I shook my head, pretty sure I didn't want to know the answer. "Exactly 0 of the Category 1 parties," he said, digging into a stack of pancakes that could have fed a small village. "But every single Category 2 party, they all had rules tighter than Fort Knox. No phones, no recording devices, no outside contact. Hell, I once followed a party where they made everyone put their phones in a lockbox and sign actual paperwork." "What happened at that one?" I asked, though part of me really didn't want to know. Marty's expression got darker than his coffee. "Let's just say the bride's new husband got his marriage annulled faster than you can say irreconcilable differences. And he thanked me for saving him about 20 years of therapy and a really ugly divorce." Great. Just fantastic. My fiancé was potentially following the playbook of women who'd ended up in annulled marriages. "But here's the thing," Marty continued, apparently not noticing that I was having a small existential crisis over my hash browns. "Even if nothing happens, and I mean nothing, you're still going to sleep better at night. Because right now, you're sitting here wondering if the woman you're about to marry is planning to cheat on you at her own bachelorette party. That's not exactly the foundation for marital bliss, you know?" He had a point. The past week had been torture. Every time Clara smiled at me, I wondered if it was guilt. Every time she kissed me goodbye, I wondered if she was practicing for someone else. Every time she mentioned the party, I felt like I was being fed a line of bull so thick you could pave a highway with it. "So here's my professional recommendation," Marty said, pointing at me with a fork loaded with syrup-soaked pancake. "You pay me $700. I follow your fiancée and her merry band of bridesmaids to whatever den of iniquity they've chosen for their sacred sisterhood ritual. I document everything with more precision than a NASA mission. And then you know, one way or the other. And if nothing happens, then you wasted $700, but you can walk down that aisle knowing your wife-to-be is exactly who you think she is. $700 for peace of mind? That's cheaper than most people spend on wedding cake, and it'll last a hell of a lot longer. And if something does happen? Marty's smile was grim, but somehow reassuring. Then you just saved yourself from making the biggest mistake of your life. Think about it. What's $700 compared to a lifetime of wondering if you can trust your spouse? What's $700 compared to finding out 6 months into your marriage that your wife's idea of girls' night involves activities that would make a sailor blush? I sat there, staring at my eggs Benedict and thinking about the math. $700 versus potentially decades of marriage to someone who might be lying to my face about the most basic level of fidelity. $700 versus the cost of a divorce if I found out later that Clara wasn't exactly the angel I thought she was. Plus, Marty added, apparently sensing my internal calculation, I guarantee my work. If I miss something important, if I don't get clear evidence one way or the other, you don't pay. I've been doing this long enough to know when I've got a clear picture and when I don't. That sealed it. I pulled out my wallet and counted out $700 in cash, feeling like I was either making the smartest decision of my life or paying someone to destroy my relationship. Maybe both. Deal, I said, sliding the money across the table. But Marty, if nothing happens, if she really is just having innocent fun, then you'll have learned that your fiancée is exactly who you hope she is, and you can feel good about marrying her, he finished. But if something does happen, well, you just saved yourself a mortgage payment and about a decade of therapy sessions. As Marty pocketed the cash and shook my hand with a grip that could have crushed walnuts, I felt this weird mix of relief and terror. Relief because I was finally going to know the truth, one way or another. Terror because, well, I was finally going to know the truth. Friday night, I said. She's leaving around 7. I'll be ready, Marty nodded. And kid? Try not to act suspicious between now and then. Just be normal, whatever normal looks like for you two. Normal, right? Because there's nothing normal about hiring a private investigator to follow your fiancée to her bachelorette party. But then again, there's nothing normal about requiring NDAs for girls' night out, either. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't help but think, this is either going to be the easiest $700 Marty ever made, or the best $700 I ever spent. Spoiler alert, it was both. Friday night played out like a scene from a sitcom where the husband pretends everything's normal while secretly losing his mind. Clara got all dolled up in this little black dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, complete with a sparkly bride-to-be sash that made her look like she was competing in some twisted beauty pageant. She spent about 2 hours getting ready, which should have been my first clue that this wasn't your typical wine and face masks kind of evening. You look amazing, I told her, and I meant it. Clara always looked good, but that night she looked like she was getting ready for something special. Really special. The kind of special that makes your stomach drop when you realize your fiancé doesn't usually put that much effort into girls' night. She kissed me goodbye with this weird intensity, like she was either really going to miss me or really guilty about something she was about to do. I love you, she said, staring into my eyes with the kind of sincerity that probably would have made me cry if I wasn't busy wondering whether she was lying through her perfectly glossed lips. Love you too, babe. Have fun with the girls. And then she was gone, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume and my rapidly escalating anxiety. I spent the next few hours pacing around our apartment like a caged tiger, trying to watch Netflix and failing miserably because my brain kept conjuring up increasingly horrible scenarios about what Clara might be doing. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Marty crouched behind some bush with night vision goggles, documenting whatever the hell was happening at my fiancé's bachelorette party. By morning, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck driven by my own paranoia. Saturday morning couldn't come fast enough. Marty had texted me at around 11. Coffee shop on 5th Street. 1 hour. Bring tissues. The tissues comment made my blood pressure spike to levels that probably required medical intervention, but I hauled myself out of bed and drove to meet my fate. The coffee shop was one of those hipster places where they charge $8 for coffee that tastes exactly like the stuff you can make at home, except with more attitude and less actual caffeine. Marty was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. His expression was somewhere between sympathetic and "this is why I drink." "Kid," he said as I sat down, "I'm really sorry about what I'm about to show you." My heart started doing this thing where it felt like it was trying to escape through my throat. That bad, huh? He nodded grimly and slid a USB drive across the table like we were in some kind of spy movie. Except instead of government secrets, this little device contained footage that was about to blow up my entire life. Thanks for the easy $700, though. I stared at that USB like it was a hand grenade with the pin pulled out. Part of me wanted to grab it and run straight home to see what was on it. Another part of me wanted to throw it in the nearest trash can and pretend this whole thing had never happened. But the biggest part of me, the part that had been slowly going insane for the past week, needed to know. How bad are we talking? I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want the answer. Scale of 1 to 10? Your fiancée just scored herself a solid 11. I plugged the USB into my laptop right there in the coffee shop, because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment and couldn't wait until I got home to have my heart ripped out and fed to me with a side of betrayal. The footage started innocently enough. There was Clara and her crew, Sierra, her sister Jenny, and a couple of other bridesmaids whose names I could never remember, walking into what looked like a pretty upscale hotel. Everyone was giggling and carrying on like they were heading to a slumber party. Clara looked happy, relaxed, totally normal. For about 30 seconds, I thought maybe Marty had been wrong. Maybe this really was just going to be boring footage of women drinking wine and talking about their feelings. Then the footage jumped to later that night, and my world went completely off the rails. There was Clara, my Clara, in that same little black dress, wearing her little bride-to-be sash like some kind of twisted badge of honor, locked in what could only be described as a full-contact make-out session with a guy who looked like he'd stepped off the cover of one of those romance novels my sister was always reading. This dude had more muscles than an anatomy textbook and probably fewer brain cells than my nephew's goldfish. But wait, it gets worse. Sierra was in the background acting like some kind of deranged cheerleader, literally yelling encouragement like this was a sporting event. Get it, girl? Last night of freedom, she was shouting, pumping her fist in the air like Clara had just scored a touchdown in the Infidelity Olympics. I sat there staring at the screen, watching my fiancé's tongue explore this stranger's mouth with the kind of enthusiasm she usually reserved for half-price sales at Nordstrom, and I felt something inside me just break. Not dramatically, not with a big emotional explosion, but more like a light switch being turned off. One second I was a guy planning his wedding. The next second I was a guy watching his future wife auditioning for a role in someone else's life. But the real kicker, the moment that made me want to throw my laptop across the coffee shop, came next. Clara, my sweet, innocent, I just want privacy for girls' night, fiancé, reached into her purse and handed this muscled moron her hotel key card. Just handed it over like she was giving him a coupon for free French fries. The camera caught her leaning in close to his ear, and thanks to Marty's apparently excellent surveillance equipment, I could hear exactly what she whispered. Room 412. Last chance to be with someone who doesn't need elastic waistbands. Elastic waistbands. She was talking about me. I don't even own sweatpants, but apparently in Clara's mind, I was already some kind of middle-aged couch potato who'd given up on life and personal fitness. The woman I was planning to marry had just insulted me to another man while handing him the keys to her hotel room. I closed the laptop and sat there for a minute, trying to process what I'd just seen. The coffee shop suddenly felt too loud, too bright, too normal for a place where I'd just watched my entire future implode in high-definition video. You okay, kid? Marty asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. She gave him her hotel room key, I said, because apparently my brain had decided to focus on that particular detail instead of, processing the emotional devastation of watching your fiancé cheat on you. Yeah, Marty nodded. That's usually when people cross from inappropriate behavior into your wedding is definitely canceled territory. I stared at the USB drive like it was evidence in a murder case. Which, in a way, it was. It was evidence of the murder of my relationship, my trust, and my belief that I actually knew the woman I was supposed to marry in 2 weeks. So what now? I asked. Marty finished his coffee and stood up. Now you decide whether you want to confront her or just disappear. But either way, kid, you just dodged the biggest bullet of your life. As I watched him walk away, I couldn't help but think he was absolutely right. $700 had just saved me from marrying someone who thought elastic waistbands were a valid reason for infidelity. Best money I'd ever spent? Absolutely. Worst way to find out your fiancé was a cheating liar? Also absolutely. But at least now I knew the truth. Sunday afternoon rolled around like some kind of twisted homecoming parade. Except instead of celebrating the local football team, I was about to witness my fiancée deliver what would probably be the performance of her lifetime. I'd spent most of Saturday in a weird emotional purgatory, part devastated, part relieved, and weirdly fascinated by just how good Clara was at this whole deception thing. I mean, I'd always known she was smart, but I hadn't realized she was CI-level good at compartmentalizing massive betrayal. I was sitting on our couch, pretending to watch some mindless Sunday afternoon football, while actually rehearsing different ways to confront her about the footage. Should I go full dramatic and just play the video when she walked in? Should I ask leading questions and see if she'd dig herself deeper? Should I pretend everything was normal and see how far she'd take the charade? The decision was made for me when I heard her key in the lock around 3 o'clock. She came through the door like she was floating on cloud 9, practically glowing with what I now knew was post-infidelity satisfaction, but what she was probably going to try to sell as post-spa relaxation. "Hey, babe," she called out in that sing-song voice she usually reserved for when she wanted something expensive or had done something she felt guilty about. Today, I was guessing it was definitely the latter. She bounced into the living room looking like she'd stepped out of a wellness magazine. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup was flawless, and she had this serene, satisfied expression that would have been really attractive if I didn't know it came from spending the night with Captain Sixpack instead of getting cucumber facials with her girlfriends. "How was girls' night?" I asked, putting on my best interested boyfriend face while internally bracing myself for what was about to be either an Academy Award-worthy performance or the most insulting pack of lies I'd ever heard in my life. "Oh my God, it was exactly what I needed," she gushed, settling onto the couch next to me with the kind of dramatic sigh that suggested she'd been through some kind of life-changing spiritual journey rather than, cheating on her fiancé. Just pure relaxation and bonding time with the girls. Pure relaxation. Right. Because nothing says relaxation like making out with strange men and handing out hotel room keys like party favors. "That's great, honey. What did you guys end up doing?" And here's where Clara really showed her true colors. Instead of just giving me a simple lie and moving on, she went full method actor on me. She pulled out her phone with this excited expression, like she couldn't wait to share the evidence of her totally innocent evening. "Look," she said, scrolling through her photos with the enthusiasm of someone showing off vacation pictures. "We got matching spa pajamas and took the cutest pictures before the whole no phones rule kicked in." She showed me a series of photos that were clearly staged specifically for this moment. There was Clara and all her bridesmaids in matching silk pajamas, holding up face masks and giving exaggerated spa poses. Everyone looked perfectly innocent and wholesome, like they were about to spend the evening braiding each other's hair and talking about their feelings. The level of premeditation was honestly impressive in a really disturbing way. These women hadn't just decided to cheat. They'd planned a complete cover story, complete with photographic evidence. They'd basically created a whole false timeline of events, like they were running some kind of criminal enterprise instead of just having a bachelorette party. "Wow," I said, looking at the photos and marveling at just how normal everyone looked. "You guys really went all out with the spa theme." "Sierra's idea," Clara said, which was probably the first true thing she'd said since walking through the door. She thought it would be fun to document the before shots, before we all looked like swollen messes from the facial treatments. Facial treatments. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. The only facial treatment Clara had gotten involved significantly more tongue action than your typical spa experience. "And then what?" I asked, because apparently I'm a masochist who enjoys watching people lie directly to my face. "Well, after we took the pictures, we all put our phones away like we planned. No distractions, just pure girl time." She curled up against me, resting her head on my shoulder with this contented sigh that made my skin crawl. We did face masks, got massages, talked about life and relationships and wedding stress. It was exactly what I needed to center myself before the big day. The big day? Our wedding. The wedding that was supposed to happen in less than 2 weeks. The wedding she was apparently still planning to go through with, despite having spent the previous night auditioning for the role of someone else's girlfriend. "Sounds perfect," I managed to say, while thinking about how she'd looked whispering sweet nothings about elastic waistbands into Mr. Universe's ear. It really was. She looked up at me with those big blue eyes that used to make me forget my own name, and for just a second, I almost believed her. Almost. You know what the best part was? What's that? Just remembering how lucky I am to have you. All the girls were talking about their relationship problems, and I realized I don't have any of that drama. I get to marry my best friend in 2 weeks. Best friend. The woman who was calling me her best friend had literally cheated on me less than 24 hours ago, and was now lying about it with the kind of sincerity that would make professional politicians jealous. That night, she was extra affectionate. More kisses than usual, more cuddling, more of that future wife energy that she probably thought would convince me that she was totally devoted to our relationship. She even initiated sex, which under normal circumstances would have been great, but given what I'd seen on that USB drive, just felt like another layer of betrayal. Lying there afterward, listening to her breathe beside me while she slept the peaceful sleep of someone with absolutely no conscience, I made my decision. This wasn't going to be a private confrontation. This wasn't going to be a quiet conversation where Clara got to spin the story and manipulate the narrative. I picked up my phone and called Frank, Clara's dad, even though it was past 11 at night. Frank, it's me. I'm sorry to call so late, but I need to talk to you and Margaret about something important. Can you both meet me tomorrow? Is everything okay? Frank's voice had that immediate alert quality that comes from 20 years in the military and a lifetime of dealing with family crises. No, I said, looking at Clara's peaceful, lying face in the dim light from our bedroom window. Everything is definitely not okay, but it will be. The next day, I sat in Frank and Margaret's living room with my laptop open, watching two people who'd raised Clara with love and values realize that their daughter had turned into someone they didn't recognize. Margaret cried. Actual tears, the kind that come from deep disappointment and the realization that someone you love has made choices that go against everything you taught them. Frank's reaction was more controlled, but somehow more terrifying. His jaw got that granite look that probably made enemy soldiers reconsider their life choices back in his army days. The wedding's off, he said after watching the footage twice, his voice quiet but absolutely final. But we're not going to cancel it quietly. He looked at me with the kind of respect I'd never seen from him before. She wants to lie to everyone, including you? Fine. But she's going to find out what happens when you try to play games with people who don't appreciate being played. What are you thinking? I asked. Frank's smile was grim, but somehow reassuring. Rehearsal dinners in 5 days. She wants theater? Let's give her theater. That's when I knew Clara had picked the wrong family to mess with. Frank wasn't just disappointed. He was strategically angry. And strategically angry Frank was about to become Clara's worst nightmare. The next few days were going to be very interesting. You know how they say guilty people overcompensate? Well, Clara turned overcompensation into an Olympic sport over the next few days. I'm talking about a performance so over the top that if she'd been auditioning for a role as world's most devoted fiancé, she would have been told to dial it back about 70%. Monday morning, I woke up to the smell of actual breakfast being cooked in our kitchen. Not microwaved oatmeal or toast grabbed on the way out the door. I'm talking full-scale bacon, eggs, pancakes, the whole 9 yards. This from a woman who usually considered popping a bagel in the toaster to be gourmet cooking. I stumbled into the kitchen, still half asleep and wondering if I'd somehow entered an alternate dimension where Clara had been replaced by Martha Stewart's younger, more domestic sister. "Morning, babe," she chirped, literally bouncing over to give me a kiss that lasted about 3 seconds longer than our usual morning peck. "I made your favorite breakfast." My favorite breakfast. I looked at the spread she'd laid out on our dining table, the table we usually only used for storing mail and my laptop, and realized she'd somehow managed to recreate the exact meal my mom used to make me on special occasions. Blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, crispy bacon that wasn't burned for once, and eggs over easy that were actually cooked properly instead of resembling rubber. "This looks amazing," I said, because what else do you say when your cheating fiancé is suddenly channeling Julia Child? "What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to spoil my future husband?" she asked, batting her eyelashes in a way that would have been cute if I didn't know she'd been practicing those same moves on Mr. Six-Pack less than 48 hours earlier. The next few days followed the same pattern. Tuesday, She showed up at my office during lunch with my favorite sandwich from that deli across town. The one that's a 20-minute drive in good traffic and requires her to take time off work to get to. Wednesday, she surprised me with tickets to a baseball game. Even though she usually complains that baseball is about as exciting as watching paint dry in slow motion. Thursday was when things got really weird. I came home to find our apartment had been transformed into something out of a romantic comedy. Candles everywhere, soft music playing, the scent of whatever expensive perfume she only wore on special occasions filling the air. Clara emerged from the bedroom wearing this little black dress that definitely wasn't part of her usual post-work wardrobe, carrying 2 glasses of wine and looking like she'd stepped off the cover of some relationship magazine. "What's all this for?" I asked, genuinely curious about what kind of performance I was about to witness. "I just realized how close we are to the wedding," she said, setting down the wine glasses and wrapping her arms around my neck. "And I want to make sure you know how excited I am to spend the rest of my life with you. The rest of my life with you." Coming from someone who'd literally handed another man her hotel room key 3 days earlier, this was either the most ironic statement I'd ever heard or evidence that Clara had somehow convinced herself that what happened at the Bachelorette party existed in some kind of alternate reality that didn't count. But here's where it got really interesting. After dinner, which she'd somehow managed to cook without burning anything, a minor miracle in itself, she started getting handsy. Not just regular affectionate, but full-scale seduction mode. The kind of behavior that usually only happened on birthdays, anniversaries, or when she wanted something really expensive. "I've been thinking," she whispered, running her fingers through my hair in that way that used to make me forget my own name. "About our honeymoon. About being married. About how good we are together." I sat there listening to her talk about our future while thinking about how she'd looked grinding against Captain Muscles on Marty's surveillance footage. The cognitive dissonance was so intense I was getting a headache. "You know what I love most about us?" she continued, apparently oblivious to the fact that I was having trouble processing her sudden transformation into the world's most devoted fiancé. "We're best friends. We trust each other completely. There are no secrets between us. No secrets between us." The woman who'd orchestrated an elaborate cover-up involving staged photos and matching pajamas was telling me we had no secrets. The woman who'd cheated on me and then lied about it with the conviction of a seasoned politician was waxing poetic about our mutual trust. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so deeply disturbing. The seduction attempt continued into the bedroom, where Clara pulled out moves I hadn't seen since we first started dating. She was putting an effort that would have made professional entertainers jealous, all while whispering sweet nothings about our upcoming marriage and how much she loved me. Lying there afterward, watching her curl up against me with this satisfied, contented expression, I couldn't help but think, funny how cheaters get so romantic right after an affair. It's like guilt is nature's Viagra. Friday morning brought more of the same treatment. Coffee made exactly how I like it, my favorite shirt laid out for me, and a goodbye kiss that lasted long enough to make me wonder if she was trying to erase the memory of kissing someone else. "I can't wait to see you at the rehearsal dinner tonight," she said, straightening my tie with the kind of wifely attention she usually reserved for special occasions. "I'm so excited for everyone to celebrate us." Celebrate us. If only she knew that the rehearsal dinner was going to be less celebration and more public execution. But here's what really got me. Throughout this entire week of sudden domestic bliss, Clara never once seemed genuinely remorseful. She seemed guilty, sure, but not in a "I'm sorry for what I did" way. More in a "I hope I don't get caught" way. Every extra kiss, every special meal, every romantic gesture felt like a calculated move in some game she was playing rather than genuine affection. It was like watching someone try to cover up a crime by being extra nice to the witnesses. The motivation wasn't love, it was damage control. By Friday afternoon, I was actually looking forward to the rehearsal dinner. Not because I was excited about our wedding. That ship had sailed the moment I watched Clara swap spit with a stranger, but because I was genuinely curious to see how she'd react when her carefully constructed world of lies came crashing down around her. I spent the day pretending to be excited about the evening ahead, while secretly texting Frank updates about Clara's behavior. Her transformation into the perfect fiancée was so dramatic that even her own father was amazed when I described her sudden domestic goddess act. "She's really pulling out all the stops," I texted him. "Too bad it's too little, too late." he replied. See you tonight. As I got dressed for what was supposed to be our rehearsal dinner, but was actually going to be the most spectacular relationship implosion in recent family history, I couldn't help but smile. Clara had spent the week trying to convince me she was the perfect woman for me. Tonight, she was going to find out that sometimes being perfect isn't enough when you've already proven you're anything but. The irony was almost poetic. She'd worked so hard to make me believe she was devoted to our relationship. She'd forgotten that I already knew exactly how devoted she really was. And in about 2 hours, everyone else would know too. Walking into Bella Vista, the fancy Italian restaurant Frank and Margaret had booked for our rehearsal dinner, felt like entering the set of a disaster movie about 5 minutes before everything goes completely to hell. You know that moment in horror films where the audience is screaming, "Don't go in there," at the screen? Yeah, that was me. Except I was the one walking straight into the carnage, and I was actually looking forward to it. The place was gorgeous. White tablecloths, soft lighting, the kind of ambience that usually costs about $50 per person before you even look at the wine list. Frank and Margaret had really gone all out, which made what was about to happen feel even more dramatically appropriate. If you're going to publicly destroy someone's life, you might as well do it somewhere with good bread and professional waitstaff. Clara arrived looking absolutely stunning in this emerald green dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She'd clearly spent hours getting ready, and the result was magazine cover perfection. Hair styled like she'd just stepped out of a salon, makeup applied with artistic precision, jewelry chosen to complement the dress without being too flashy. She looked like every man's dream of the perfect wife-to-be. Too bad she'd already auditioned for the role of someone else's mistress. The guest list was about 40 people, both sides of the family, wedding party members, close friends who'd been invited to witness what they thought would be a celebration of our upcoming marriage. Everyone was dressed up, chatting happily, completely unaware that they were about to witness what would probably become legendary family dinner conversation for decades to come. I played my part perfectly, greeting people with the appropriate level of excitement, accepting congratulations with just the right amount of humble happiness. Clara was doing the same, working the room like a seasoned politician, hugging relatives, complimenting dresses, being the picture-perfect bride-to-be. We even posed for pictures together, smiling like we were living some kind of fairy tale romance instead of a psychological thriller. "You two look so happy," my Aunt Linda gushed at one point, snapping photos of us with the dedication of a paparazzi photographer. "I can just feel the love between you." The love. Right. If only she knew that the only thing I was feeling was anticipation for the moment when Clara's entire world imploded in front of 40 witnesses. Frank had been working behind the scenes all week, and I had to admire his military precision in planning this operation. He'd coordinated with the restaurant's AV system, prepared the footage, even timed everything to happen right after the salad course, but before the main entree. The man approached public humiliation with the same strategic planning most people reserve for actual military campaigns. When it came time for toasts, Clara stood up first, raising her champagne glass with the grace of someone who'd been practicing this moment in the mirror. The entire room fell quiet, everyone turning their attention to the glowing bride-to-be who was about to give what she thought would be a heartfelt speech about love and commitment. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying that perfect mix of emotion and composure that would have made a public speaking coach proud. "Looking around this room at all the people we love, I'm reminded of how blessed we are to have such amazing family and friends supporting us." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Someone in the back, probably my cousin Mike, shouted, "Hear, hear," like we were in some kind of Victorian novel. "Tomorrow, I get to marry my best friend," Clara continued, looking directly at me with those big blue eyes that still managed to make my heart skip a beat, even though I now knew they belonged to a world-class liar. "I get to promise forever to the man who knows me better than anyone else in the world. The man who knows me better than anyone else." The irony was so thick you could have served it as dessert. "To forever love," she concluded, raising her glass higher. The applause was enthusiastic and genuine. Everyone clinked glasses, took sips of champagne, and settled back into their seats with those satisfied expressions people get when they witness what they think is true romance. For about 30 seconds, it was exactly what a rehearsal dinner toast should be: heartfelt, romantic, and celebratory. Then Frank stood up. "That was beautiful, Clara," he said, his voice carrying that particular tone of authority that comes from decades of commanding respect. "Now I'd like to share something with everyone. A little video montage I put together to celebrate Clara's journey to this moment." I watched Clara's face carefully as her father moved toward the front of the room where the restaurant's projection screen had been set up. She looked curious but not concerned, probably thinking this was going to be one of those embarrassing but sweet parental tributes featuring baby photos and graduation pictures. The video started exactly as she expected. There was baby Clara in a frilly dress, looking adorable and innocent. Toddler Clara taking her first steps. Little Clara on her first day of school, gap-toothed and grinning. Teenage Clara at prom, looking beautiful and full of promise. College Clara at graduation, proud and accomplished. Everyone was smiling, making those collective sounds that audiences make during heartwarming family videos. Clara was beaming, clearly touched by her father's tribute, and probably thinking this was exactly the kind of sweet, traditional moment she'd been hoping for. Then the music changed. The sweet, nostalgic melody that had been playing behind the childhood montage shifted to something more ominous. The screen flickered, and suddenly we were looking at security footage from a hotel hallway, complete with timestamp and date. Last Saturday night. The room went dead silent. Not just quiet, but that special kind of silence that happens when 40 people simultaneously realize they're witnessing something they definitely weren't supposed to see. There, in high-definition clarity, was Clara in her Bachelorette party outfit, making out with Mr. Sixpack like her life depended on it. The audio was crystal clear too, so everyone could hear Sierra's drunken cheering in the background, and, even worse, Clara's whispered comment about elastic waistbands. The collective gasp from the audience sounded like air being sucked out of a vacuum chamber. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Wine glasses hovered in midair. Someone's grandmother audibly whispered, "Oh my stars," in that scandalized tone usually reserved for particularly shocking daytime television. Clara went from glowing bride-to-be to deer in headlights in about 2 seconds flat. "Turn it off," she screamed, jumping up from her chair so fast she knocked over her water glass. "This is fake. This isn't real." But the video kept rolling. Hotel hallway footage, Clara handing over her room key, the whole sordid timeline of events playing out for 40 horrified dinner guests like some kind of twisted reality show. Frank's voice cut through the chaos with military precision. "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that tomorrow's wedding has been canceled. My daughter has disgraced herself and our family. Full refunds will be processed for anyone who made travel arrangements." I just sat there, calmly sipping my wine like it was sweet tea on a summer afternoon, watching my ex-fiance's life explode in real time. For once in this entire relationship, I wasn't the punchline of the joke. I was just the guy who'd been smart enough to hire Marty. You know what they say about storms? It's not the initial lightning strike that gets you. It's all the flooding that comes afterward. Well, Saturday morning after the rehearsal dinner from hell, the floodgates of drama officially opened, and Clara was about to find out what it's like to drown in the consequences of your own actions. I woke up to my phone buzzing like it was having a seizure. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and enough voicemails to fill a small novel. Most of them were from Clara, and the evolution of her messages throughout the night read like the 5 stages of grief compressed into digital format. 12:47 a.m. Please call me. We need to talk. 1:15 a.m. I can explain everything. It's not what it looked like. 1:52 a.m. You're being ridiculous. People make mistakes. 2:33 a.m. This is all your fault for not trusting me. 3:18 a.m. You'll die alone and miserable, you pathetic loser. Ah yes, the classic progression from "please forgive me" to "you're a worthless human being." Very Hallmark Channel. Very predictable. Very Clara. I could practically set my watch by how quickly she'd gone from victim to villain in her own mind. The voicemails were even better. She'd left them throughout the night, each one more unhinged than the last. The first few were tearful apologies where she claimed she'd been drunk and it didn't mean anything. By voice message number 8, she was screaming about how I'd violated her privacy and destroyed her reputation. By the final message, recorded at nearly 4 in the morning, she was slurring her words and calling me names that would make a sailor blush. But Clara's meltdown was just the opening act of this particular shit show. Sierra, her loyal maid of honor and professional accomplice, had also been busy overnight. Apparently, she decided that the best defense was a good offense, because my phone was full of messages from her too. "You're disgusting for recording private moments." One text read, "There's such a thing as girl code, and you violated it." Girl code. Apparently, girl code now included covering up infidelity and lying to your friends' fiancés. Who knew? I replied with a screenshot of the audio where Sierra could be heard encouraging Clara to get tested results from the entertainment, a charming little detail that implied this wasn't their first rodeo with questionable bachelorette party activities. Sierra blocked me faster than a telemarketer hangs up on the do not call registry. By 10 o'clock Saturday morning, I was already getting calls from mutual friends who'd heard about the dinner disaster through the gossip grapevine. The story was spreading through our social circle with the speed and accuracy of a game of telephone played by drunk teenagers. "Dude, is it true Clara cheated on you at her bachelorette party?" my buddy Jake called to ask. "Not just cheated," I told him. "She gave the guy her hotel room key and then came home and lied about it for a week while cooking me elaborate breakfasts." Holy shit. That's actually kind of impressive in a really twisted way. Right? The level of premeditation was honestly remarkable. But the real entertainment came Monday morning when Clara decided to take her show on the road. Apparently, spending the weekend spiraling in her apartment wasn't dramatic enough, so she decided to launch a full-scale damage control campaign at her office. I heard about this secondhand from my friend Rachel, who works in the same building as Clara's marketing firm. According to Rachel, Clara had spent Monday morning telling anyone who would listen that I was an abusive, controlling fiancé who'd been stalking her and violating her privacy. "She's telling people you hired someone to follow her because you're paranoid and possessive," Rachel texted me. "She's playing the victim card pretty hard." The victim card. Of course she was. Because nothing says victim like cheating on your fiancé and then lying about it while planning an elaborate cover-up involving staged photographs and matching pajamas. But here's the thing about trying to control a narrative in the age of social media. Videos have a tendency to go viral, especially when they involve public meltdowns at fancy restaurants. By Tuesday afternoon, someone had posted a cell phone recording of Clara's screaming fit at the rehearsal dinner, complete with her desperate claims that the surveillance footage was deepfake technology. The internet is not kind to people who cheat on their partners and then claim the evidence is fake. Clara's video got shared, commented on, and memed into oblivion. Someone even set her screaming to music and turned it into a TikTok trend. She became a cautionary tale about modern relationships, complete with her own hashtag #ElasticWaistbandGate. By Wednesday, her damage control campaign at work had backfired spectacularly. Turns out, when you tell your coworkers that your ex-fiancé is a controlling stalker and then video evidence surfaces showing you're actually the one who cheated, people tend to question your credibility. Her boss, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia who'd always been polite but distant whenever I met her at office parties, apparently called Clara into her office for what Rachel described as a very uncomfortable conversation about professional conduct and personal drama affecting the workplace. The promotion Clara had been gunning for all year? Gone. Handed to someone who hadn't spent the week turning the office into their personal therapy session. But wait, there's more. Because Clara wasn't content to just destroy her professional reputation, she decided to go for broke and take down her personal relationships too. Thursday brought the news that she'd shown up at my gym, apparently hoping to confront me in public and continue her campaign of painting herself as the wrong party. Unfortunately for her, I'd been expecting this kind of behavior and had already given the staff a heads up about potential drama. Yeah, she came in around noon. Tony, one of the trainers, told me later. Started yelling about how you were spreading lies about her. We had to ask her to leave when she started screaming at other members. She'd also tried showing up at Murphy's Pub, our usual Friday night hangout, where she'd apparently cornered several of our mutual friends and demanded they choose sides in our breakup. This went about as well as you'd expect, considering most of them had either been at the rehearsal dinner or had seen the viral video by then. She kept saying the footage was manipulated, my friend Kevin told me. But dude, we all know what Clara looks like when she's lying. She gets that weird twitchy thing with her left eye. The coup de grace came Friday afternoon when I got a call from my lawyer, Leo Goldstein, who was laughing so hard he could barely speak. Your ex-fiance, he wheezed between chuckles, just tried to sue you for emotional distress and invasion of privacy. How'd that work out for her? Well, let's see. She hired a private investigator to follow you to document infidelity, except you weren't cheating. You hired a private investigator to follow her to document infidelity, and she was cheating. Her case got thrown out faster than yesterday's newspaper, and now she has to pay your legal fees. I had to sit down for that one. Wait, so she has to pay me for the privilege of trying to sue me for catching her cheating? Congratulations, Leo said, still chuckling. You just got paid to dump your fiancé. By the end of the week, Clara had managed to destroy her professional reputation, alienate most of our mutual friends, get herself banned from my gym and our favorite bar, and lose a court case so badly that she ended up owing me money. It was like watching someone play a video game where the objective is to ruin your own life as quickly and completely as possible. And she was winning. You'd think that after losing her promotion, getting banned from local establishments, and having to pay my legal fees, Clara would have maybe taken a step back and reevaluated her life choices. You'd think that any reasonable person would have recognized they'd hit rock bottom and started digging upward instead of downward. You'd be wrong. Turns out, rock bottom has a basement, and Clara had apparently decided to break out the heavy excavation equipment and see just how deep she could go. What followed was a masterclass in self-destruction that would have made reality TV producers weep with joy. Week 3 of the post-rehearsal dinner apocalypse brought news that Clara had been arrested. Not once, but twice. In the same weekend. The first arrest happened Friday night at a trendy downtown bar called Mystique, where she'd apparently decided to celebrate her newfound freedom by getting absolutely wasted and starting a fight with another woman who'd made the mistake of looking at her wrong. According to the police report, Clara had thrown a Cosmopolitan at some poor innocent bystander and then tried to climb over the bar to get at the bartender when he refused to serve her another drink. She kept screaming about how everyone was against her and how her life was ruined by lies. The bartender told the local news, because of course this made the news. She said something about elastic waistbands, which honestly made no sense to anyone. Elastic waistbands. Even in her drunken stupor, Clara was still obsessing over her insult from the Bachelorette party. The woman had turned her own cheating confession into a recurring theme of her public breakdowns. The second arrest came Sunday morning when she decided that sobriety wasn't working for her and went on another bender, this time at a sports bar where she apparently tried to start a karaoke revolution by taking the microphone and refusing to give it back. The police were called when she began hurling insults at other patrons and threatening to expose all their secrets like someone exposed mine. 2 arrests in 1 weekend. Even by the standards of her recent behavior, this was impressive in all the wrong ways. But Clara wasn't done yet. Oh no, she was just getting warmed up. Monday brought the news that she'd been evicted from her apartment. Turns out, when you spend weeks having screaming matches on your balcony at all hours of the night, disturbing your neighbors with drunken tirades about surveillance footage and betrayal, the landlord tends to notice. Especially when those same neighbors start filing noise complaints and threatening to break their own leases if something isn't done about the crazy lady in 4B. She was up until 3 in the morning on Tuesday, yelling at someone on the phone about how her whole family had turned against her. Her downstairs neighbor told me when I ran into him at the grocery store. And then Thursday night she was throwing things around her apartment so hard we could hear stuff breaking through the ceiling. Throwing things. Clara, who used to get upset when I left dishes in the sink overnight, had apparently discovered the therapeutic value of property destruction. The eviction was just the beginning, though, because while Clara was busy destroying her living situation, her family drama was reaching nuclear levels. Frank had always been a man of principles, but what Clara had done, the cheating, the lying, the public embarrassment, had pushed him past his breaking point. The same military discipline that had made him an excellent father figure made him absolutely ruthless when it came to consequences for dishonorable behavior. She's no longer welcome in our home, he told me over coffee one afternoon, his expression grim but resolute. Margaret tried to give her another chance, invited her over to talk things through like adults. Clara showed up drunk, started screaming about how we'd all conspired against her, and threw Margaret's favorite vase at the wall. Margaret's favorite vase. The one she'd inherited from her grandmother, the one she'd treasured for 30 years. Clara had destroyed it in a fit of rage because her parents wouldn't enable her victim complex. That was the final straw, Frank continued. I told her to get out and not come back until she's ready to take responsibility for her actions instead of blaming everyone else for her problems. But here's where the story gets really tragic or really satisfying, depending on your perspective. Frank wasn't the only family member who'd had enough of Clara's behavior. Her cousin Jessica, who'd been like a sister to her growing up, spilled the tea about what had been happening in the extended family. Grandma Martha rewrote her will. Jessica told me during a phone call that felt like receiving classified intelligence. Clara was supposed to inherit the house in Cape Cod and a pretty substantial chunk of money. But after what happened at the rehearsal dinner, and especially after Clara started calling Grandma drunk and screaming about how the whole family were traitors, Grandma decided she didn't want to leave her inheritance to someone who'd embarrassed the family name. The house in Cape Cod. Clara had spent every summer there as a kid, had always talked about it like it was her birthright, had made plans about the renovations she'd do when she eventually inherited it. All of that, gone because she couldn't keep her hands to herself at her own bachelorette party. Where's she living now? I asked, though I wasn't sure I really wanted to know. Last I heard, she was staying in some Fleabag motel out by the highway, Jessica said. But she couldn't afford that for long, so I think she's been couch surfing with whatever friends still talk to her. Whatever friends still talk to her. That was a pretty small list by this point. Sierra had cut contact after I'd exposed her own involvement in the bachelorette party cover-up. Most of Clara's other friends had either been at the rehearsal dinner or had seen the viral video, and apparently watching someone publicly humiliate themselves while screaming about deep fakes tends to make people reevaluate their friendships. The final nail in Clara's social coffin came when she decided to crash Jenny Morrison's birthday party. Jenny being one of our mutual friends who'd been trying to stay neutral in the whole situation. According to multiple eyewitnesses, Clara showed up uninvited and already drunk, cornered Jenny in her own kitchen, and demanded to know why Jenny hadn't been returning her calls. She kept asking me to choose sides, Jenny told me later. She wanted me to publicly support her version of events, where you were the villain and she was the innocent victim. When I said I didn't want to get involved, she started screaming about how everyone had turned against her because of lies and manipulation. Jenny's husband had to physically escort Clara out of their house when she refused to leave voluntarily. The next day, Jenny blocked Clara on all social media platforms and told their entire friend group about the incident. That's when I realized Clara had achieved something truly remarkable. She'd managed to alienate literally everyone who'd ever cared about her. Her parents, her extended family, her friends, her co-workers, even random bartenders and neighbors. In the space of about a month, she'd gone from being someone with a strong support system and a bright future to being someone that people actively avoided. By the end of week 4, the rumors were that Clara was going to be moving in with her great-aunt Dolores, a woman known throughout the family for her collection of ceramic cats and her complete inability to tolerate bullshit. Aunt Dolores lived in a tiny apartment in upstate New York, about as far from civilization as you could get while still technically being in the same state. Dolores called me, Frank said during one of our regular check-ins. She said Clara could stay with her, but only if she followed Dolores's rules. No drinking, no parties, no drama. She has to get a job and contribute to household expenses. And if she steps out of line even once, she's out on the street. Aunt Dolores's apartment, with the ceramic cats and the strict rules in the middle of nowhere location. It was like Clara had somehow managed to sentence herself to exile in the least appealing place possible. As I hung up the phone after Frank's update, I couldn't help but feel a weird sense of closure. Not satisfaction, exactly, but something like it. Clara had destroyed herself so thoroughly that there was nothing left for me to feel angry about. She'd become her own worst enemy and most effective punishment. Sometimes justice doesn't require any effort from the people who've been wronged. Sometimes the person who hurt you is perfectly capable of destroying their own life without any help from anyone else. And sometimes, watching someone dig their own grave is the best revenge of all. 3 months later, I was sitting in my therapist's office talking about how weirdly good my life had become since my entire relationship imploded in front of 40 dinner guests. Dr. Patricia Chun had been recommended by my buddy Jake after his own divorce, and she specialized in helping people rebuild their lives after what she diplomatically called significant betrayals. "So how are you feeling about everything now?" she asked during one of our sessions. "Honestly, Like I dodged a bullet the size of Texas, I told her. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I'd never hired Marty. I'd be married to someone who thinks cheating is acceptable as long as you don't get caught. Dr. Chin nodded. And what about moving forward? That's when I told her about Paige. I'd met Paige on a hiking trail about 6 weeks earlier. She was struggling with her backpack, and I'd helped her adjust the straps. We ended up hiking the same trail, talking about everything and nothing, and by the end of the afternoon, I realized I'd laughed more in 4 hours than I had in the last 6 months of my relationship with Clara. Paige was different in all the ways that mattered. She was honest, sometimes brutally so. She was funny without being cruel. And most importantly, she could cook with actual spices instead of thinking salt was some kind of exotic seasoning adventure. She made me dinner last night, I told Dr. Chun. Real dinner, with herbs and flavors and everything. I didn't realize how much I'd missed eating food that actually tasted like something. The contrast was stark. Clara's idea of cooking had been opening a jar of marinara sauce and dumping it over overcooked pasta. Paige had made me chicken with rosemary and garlic that was so good I nearly proposed on the spot. Then I remembered how badly the last engagement had gone and decided to take things slower this time. I got a Christmas card from Frank and Margaret, I mentioned. They said I was the son they wished they had and thanked me for showing them who their daughter really was before it was too late. That card had honestly made me tear up. Frank had included a handwritten note saying that watching me handle the whole situation with dignity had restored his faith that there were still decent men in the world. Margaret had added that she was sorry they'd raised someone who could hurt me the way Clara had. Meanwhile, Clara's exile to Aunt Dolores's cat-filled apartment had apparently become permanent. According to family gossip that filtered back through Jessica, Clara had been fired from 2 different jobs for showing up hungover and stirring up workplace drama with her victim complex. Aunt Dolores had laid down the law. No drinking, no partying, no bringing shame on the family name. And Clara was apparently struggling with all 3 rules. Last I heard, she was working at a gas station and living under house arrest with a 70-year-old woman who collects ceramic figurines and watches Jeopardy reruns. Jessica had told me. It's like she's serving a sentence designed specifically to torture someone with her personality. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. Looking back now, I realized that Marty had been absolutely right about everything. It really had been the easiest $700 he'd ever made. One night of surveillance that saved me from years of marriage to someone who'd proven she couldn't be trusted with basic fidelity. And for me, it was hands down the best $700 I'd ever spent. That money had bought me the truth, saved me from a lifetime of wondering if I could trust my spouse, and ultimately led me to someone who made me remember what it felt like to be happy. I'd used the refunded honeymoon money to buy myself a new gaming console and take Paige on a weekend trip to Vermont, where we'd hike during the day and cooked amazing meals together in the evenings. No drama, no lies, no secret rules or surveillance footage required. Clara had destroyed herself, just like Frank had predicted. She'd made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences while surrounded by ceramic cats and her aunt's disapproving glare. Me? I was learning to trust again, eating food with actual flavor, and building something real with someone who understood that relationships are supposed to be based on honesty instead of elaborate deception. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well while the person who tried to destroy you destroys themselves instead. Marty had been right about something else too. Clara really had given me the greatest gift possible. She'd shown me exactly who she was before I made the biggest mistake of my life. And that, as it turns out, was worth every penny.